Next, let's give a warm Elevate Daytona Beach welcome to Melody Bradley.
You guys, I cannot believe I'm standing up here right now. I just have to tell you that. And listening to Christina's speech and the one that's to follow me brings me to tears a little bit, because I am a teacher. And what she just said is why I do what I do. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, and a teacher, among many other things, but that's the me that's speaking to you today. I want to talk to you about education. Now, I know that there are probably many in this room that are more educated than I am, and probably some educators. And I know that when we start talking about education, that there can be many opinions and emotions tied to that. And what I might have to say could feel a little bit controversial, so I'm just asking that for 5 minutes, you hear me out with an open mind, okay? All right, go ahead, Michael. So, as I mentioned, many of you are probably more educated than I am, so who am I to be the expert on education? Well, senior year of college, my professor told me, you are now an expert in child development. That's right, 21-year-old me with no child or little experience was an expert in child development. I wasn't an expert. I didn't even know what I wanted to be when I grew up. So I decided to be a teacher till I figured it out. Turns out I was actually kind of good at it, and I really loved it. Now, those children that I didn't have soon came along. And not only are they my reason for breathing, they're the reason that I stayed in education. But it wasn't long before I realized that the traditional setting was not meeting their needs. And if I was honest, it wasn't meeting my needs either. My need to nurture the development of children, to support them and encourage them, was being overshadowed by a bunch of acronyms. I was exhausted, I was frustrated, and quite honestly, I was hopeless. I knew something had to change for me and for my daughter. So I started asking my friends about this Montessori thing that some of their kids went to, and I kind of had an image like this. And maybe you do too. So that's why I'm here, to clarify some misconceptions and perhaps offer some hope if anybody else is feeling the way I was, that there has to be another way. As I started digging, I found out that some of the world's most successful people were Montessori trained. And that got me interested. I mean, who doesn't want their child to be the next Rhodes Scholar or founder of a billion-dollar company, right? The Montessori method teaches that it's through the imagination that children become successful. Unfortunately, in most schools, creativity and imagination is being lost and traded in for standardization. The Montessori method was created in Rome, Italy in 1907. It was brought to the United States in 1912, and it's now taught all over the world. It's a child-centered approach that assumes that children are naturally curious and eager and capable of initiating learning. Maria Montessori teaches us that it's our task as teachers to nourish and assist, guide, and introduce, not to restrict or prescribe. Now, some of you might be skeptical. My child initiate learning? Yeah, right. But think back to early childhood before they ever entered a classroom. They learned how to walk, how to talk, how to feed themselves, and so much more. It's because children are naturally curious. It wasn't until they entered a classroom that learning became something they must do. Maria Montessori teaches that it's our responsibility not to make children learn, but to keep that light burning within them that's called intelligence. I'm passionate about this, and now this is my classroom. I'm no longer frustrated, I'm excited, because I introduce activities and lessons, and then the children choose what they want to do based on their own curiosity, and they work at their own pace. I believe this is the way to keep that light burning. They're also encouraged to see problems and create solutions. These two little girls came to me and said, Mrs. Bradley, the bathroom's a mess. Can we clean it? Yeah. How many parents would appreciate that? How many employers would like employees that can see problems? We have Legos in my class, but in order to use them, they have to see a problem and create a solution. So I have some of the most unique pencil holders and shelf extenders I've ever seen. It's believed that through the repetition of pleasant and interesting materials that children develop that joy of learning, that perseverance. Could it really be that simple? More interesting materials to create self-discipline? I know that in my traditional classroom, I was constantly reinventing my behavior system to make kids learn and to get them to behave. In my classroom now, they're driven by their own sense of accomplishment and curiosity. I read a book by Keith Cameron Smith, and it was about the distinctions between millionaires and the middle class. But for me as a teacher, of course, I related that to education. He teaches that the very poor and the poor think day to day and week to week. So the correlation in education there is that in a very poor setting, teachers and students alike are just trying to get through the day. And in a poor education, maybe you're presenting a topic on Monday, test on Friday, and repeat. You can't go deep there. But it's said that the rich think year to year and the very rich think decade to decade. This is shown in our multi-age classrooms where the younger students work with the older students. They learn from each other, they plan together. The true sign of mastery is when you can teach something. So the older students get to lead and teach to show that they've really learned the material. It's often said that old ways won't open new doors. But perhaps, if you're feeling frustrated or discouraged, or hopeless about your educational setting for yourself or for your kids, maybe it's time to take a look at a new old way of learning. Thank you so much.